welded inside the earth for years upon years, eons in which something like a month or a decade or even your whole life was just a puff of air, a snap of two fingers. And eventually, the peat dried and became like a stone, and the coal man brought it to your house, and maybe you yourself carried it to the stove, and now that sunlight 100 million years old, is heating your home tonight. Time slows. The attic disappears. Has anyone ever spoken so intimately about the very things Werner is most curious about? Open your eyes, concludes the man, and see what you can with them before they close forever. And then a piano comes on, playing a lonely song that sounds to Werner like a golden boat traveling a dark river, a progression of harmonies that transfigures Solverein. The houses turned to mist, the mines filled in, the smokestacks fallen, an ancient sea spilling through the streets, and the air streaming with possibility. Werner and Jutta find the Frenchman's broadcasts again and again, always around bedtime, always midway through some increasingly familiar script. Today, let's consider the whirling machinery, children, that must engage inside your head for you to scratch your eyebrow. They hear a program about sea creatures, another about the North Pole. Jutta likes one on magnets. Werner's favorite is one about light. Eclipses and sundials, auroras and wavelengths. What do we call visible light? We call it color, but the electromagnetic spectrum runs to zero in one direction and infinity in the other. So really, children, mathematically, all of light is invisible. Werner likes to crouch in his dormer and imagine radio waves like mile-long harp strings bending and vibrating over Solverein, flying through forests, through cities, through walls. At midnight, he and Jutta prowl the ionosphere, searching for that lavish, penetrating voice. When they find it, Werner feels that he has been launched into a different existence, a secret place where great discoveries are possible, where an orphan from a coal town can solve some vital mystery hidden in the physical world. He and his sister mimic the Frenchman's experiments. They make speedboats out of matchsticks and magnets out of sewing needles. Why doesn't he say where he is, Werner? Maybe because he doesn't want us to know? He sounds rich and lonely. I bet he does these broadcasts from a huge mansion, big as this whole colony. A house with 1,000 rooms and 1,000 servants. Werner smiles. Could be. The voice, the piano again. Perhaps it's Werner's imagination, but each time he hears one of the programs, the quality seems to degrade a bit more. The sound growing fainter, as though the Frenchman broadcasts from a ship that is slowly traveling farther away. As the weeks pass, with Jutta asleep beside him, Werner looks out into the night sky, and restlessness surges through him. Life. It's happening beyond the mills, beyond the gates. Out there, people chase questions of great importance. He imagines himself as a tall, white-coated engineer striding into a laboratory. Cauldrons steam, machinery rumbles, complex charts paper the walls. He carries a lantern up the winding staircase to a starlit observatory and looks through the eyepiece of a great telescope, its mouth pointed into the black. Werner stays up late listening to his radio or driving himself through the complicated math he copied out of the Principles of Mechanics before it was confiscated. Hertz's theories are interesting, but what he loves most is building things, working with his hands, connecting his fingers to the engine of his mind. One day, a neighbor's wireless goes out, and Frau Elena suggests Werner have a look. He unscrews the back plate, waggles the tubes back and forth. One is not seated properly, and he fits it back into its groove. The radio comes back to life, and the neighbor shrieks with delight. Before long, people are stopping by the children's house every week to ask for the radio repairman. When they see 13-year-old Werner come down from the attic, rubbing his eyes, shocks of white hair sticking up off his head, homemade toolbox hanging from his fist, they stare at him with the same skeptical smirk. The older sets are the easiest to fix. Simpler circuitry, uniform tubes. Maybe it's wax dripping from the condenser or charcoal built up on the resistor. Even in the newest sets, Werner can usually puzzle out a solution. He dismantles the machine, stares into its circuits, lets his fingers trace the journeys of electrons. Power source, triode, resistor coil, loudspeaker. His mind shapes itself around the problem. Disorder becomes order. The obstacle reveals itself. And before long, the radio is fixed. Before long, Werner can draw a map in his head of the locations of nearly every radio in their district. A homemade crystal set in the kitchen of a druggist. A handsome Ken-valve radiogram in the home of a department head that was giving his fingers a shock every time he tried to change the channel. Even the poorest pit houses usually possess a state-sponsored Volksempfänger, VE 301, a mass-produced radio stamped with an eagle and a swastika, incapable of shortwave, marked only for German frequencies. Radio. It ties 1,000,000 ears to a single mouth. Werner, this man says he has a wireless in need of... Bring your tools, the man says. The corporal steers Werner into a dining room where a narrow-faced woman with 3 fresh daisies stuck through her hair. There's the offending device. He points to a massive American Philco in the adjacent room. Take your time with it. Werner squats in front of the set and tries to calm his nerves. He switches it on, waits for the tubes to warm, then runs the dial carefully down the band right to left. He runs the knob back toward the right. Nothing. It is the finest radio he has ever laid hands on. An inclined control panel, magnetic tuning, big as an icebox. 10-tube, all-wave, super heterodyne with fancy gadrooned moldings and a 2-tone walnut cabinet. It has shortwave, wide frequencies, a big attenuator. This radio costs more than everything at Children's House put together. Herr Siedler could probably hear Africa if he wanted to. Werner unscrews the backing and peers inside. The tubes are all intact, and nothing looks amiss. All right, he mumbles to himself. Think. He sits cross-legged. He examines the circuitry. He tries to envision the bouncing pathways of electrons, the signal chain like a path through a crowded city, RF signal coming in here, passing through a grid of amplifiers, then to variable condensers, then to transformer coils. He sees it. There are 2 breaks in one of the resistance wires. Could 2 men have missed something so simple? It feels like a gift. So easy. Werner rewinds the resistance track and splices the wires and plugs in the radio. When he turns it on, he half expects fire to leap out of the machine. Instead, the smoky murmur of a saxophone. Werner climbs out from behind the radio. He fixed it just by thinking, the woman exclaims. He sat there like a little mouse and thought, and in half a minute it was fixed. Light. electricity, ether, space, time, mass. Heinrich Hertz's Principles of Mechanics, Heissmeyer's famous schools, code breaking, rocket propulsion, all the latest. Open your eyes, the Frenchman on the radio used to say, and see what you can with them before they close forever.